I'm gonna text Ronan and remind her too.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 18th meeting of the Dover Area School Board. If you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Mrs. Benko, could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Rawhauser?
Here.
Mrs. Maley?
Here.
Mrs. Herman? Here. Mr. Emig?
Here.
Mr. Eifert?
Here.
Mr. DeLauder?
Here.
Mr. Deschaux?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Britton?
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. We'll move on to our presentations. First up is Mr. Stefanovich from the Dover Township.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Enjoy
evening.
the sun. A couple things here tonight, go over it pretty quick. Just as far as our statistics go, we did have 29 permits issued again in March, so it's still staying extremely active. Considering work days, that's more than one a day for us, so that's a lot. 10 of them this month were for single-family homes. Gave a little information last month about the treatment plant. And March, again, we all know was a wet time. Our average was 8.5 million gallons a day. And March 22nd was the big rain we had in the area. And that day it went up to 19 million. So they were busy. Now, on a good note, I know some people saw this already. Dunkin' Donuts is there. And today was their soft opening. They were possibly only going to be there half a day. I have no clue what happened, but they are having a ribbon cutting there if you want to attend on Saturday, May 4th at 9 o'clock. So that's their official opening that I'm aware of. Our joint comprehensive plan this month, or actually, in May, is having the 2 meetings for community input. So if anyone would like to come, we're hoping that that people come and give their ideas and listen to the plan that's discussed. On May 14th, it's at between 6 and 8 o'clock at the Dover Township Community Building, and then on the 15th, it's between 6 and 8 here in the elementary school. So they're going to hold 2 meetings, and hopefully we can get the word out there and get as many people to attend and have their input. Our township garage open house is in May. It's on Friday, May 17th. Our ribbon cutting will be at 4:45, and the open house then will be from 5 to 7, and everybody is welcome. So they're going to try to have a lot of things there demonstrated and see how we're going to be using the facilities, for the public and everything else. So feel free to come to that. I did see, just before I came over here, the township was having an Easter egg hunt tomorrow, late afternoon, and Saturday morning. Well, they have postponed it. Yeah, I just saw that only like an hour ago, so I don't know when it came out. But what they're going to do, there's a music and food festival at Brookside Park on April 27th. So they're going to move the egg hunt to that time frame. I'm sure they'll bring more information out for us about that. Now in May, in our agenda, we've got the ordinance out there yet that we're reviewing for the small cell facilities that are popping up in our area that I had commented about in prior times. We are trying to get an ordinance passed this month so that we at least have some controls, or whatever you would like to call them, some guidelines that are out there so that these small cell things don't just start popping up everywhere. So if you have any input to that, myself or Laurel or any of the supervisors would be glad to talk to anyone about it. And we're working off of the one, I believe, it came out of the Philadelphia area, an ordinance example that came to us. So that's what we're using as our starting point. The Northwest Bypass, as we're calling it, is the possible road that's going past the school here and out to Harmony Grove. I just wanted to read something. There has been some activity there between PennDOT and, I don't know all these, but they're District 8 traffic unit. But PennDOT has made some suggestions of possible timing changes for the signal at the square as an interim measure. And they are encouraging us as a group, though, to continue our long-term plan for the bypass. At their request, our engineer sent the TRG, which is, I think, the timing and traffic studies evaluation of the square and our concept plan for Carlisle Road and Harmony Grove to PennDOT. So there is some progress being made there, and I don't really have any clue yet what might happen, but I know things are trying to move forward. For the Eagle View Park, our first step is handling the sewer line there. It's called, we're calling it the Fox Run sewer replacement. Our bids went out this month, came back in. A contractor was chosen, Anrich Inc. They are doing some work for us on sewer lines over from Max Ice Cream out. So they already have their equipment in the area. Their bid was $542,000. So that was a pretty good bid. We thought it was going to be around $6, although depending on what they hit, it could be. So we'll see. And now the one thing I was asked to present, if anybody has ideas, the old golf course is in the new Eagle Park planning area. Okay, there are 5 buildings there. 2 of them are driving range buildings. One is an office type building, an old milk shed, and the old barn. And we do know that the base of the barn is a historic structure, but we're not sure. They've put some feelers out there trying to find out about the top part. So if anybody has information or has any suggestions on what to do, if we can reuse any of those structures, we would rather do that as opposed to just tearing everything down. So the prime ones to be taken out would be the driving ranges. I have no clue when they were put in, but they aren't really that good and they are in pretty bad shape. So if you have any ideas there, please let us know. And I think there's a couple in our newsletter. There's a couple events happening in April and May. The one I just mentioned, the 27th, is the Brookside Music and Food Festival. So if you're available that evening, please stop over. On May 12th is a summer concert series, and we are working together with the school. The school band will be at that concert performing, and that's from 6 to 8 on May 12th. So that's another one that will be over here at the gazebo at the park across from the township building. So if anybody would like to have a nice evening there, hopefully the weather will be good. And then one other one that's I think is pretty neat. There's on May 18th, starting at 8 o'clock, a little bit late, but it's a public night sky viewing program. It's going to be held at Lara Park, and they're going to have telescopes and stuff there for people, for education and that. So if there's any interest in that kind of activity, that's going to be in May also. Okay, any questions?
You said about the property over here, but the Shears used to own that. And I will check with one of the Shear boys, but they're long past Shear boys, because they're older than I am, if they would have any history on the barn.
Oh,
Because
great.
that's where they grew up.
Okay.
And I seen over at Davidsburg and Admire Road, they're sticking up the buildings about as fast as they can.
Yep, that has started pretty hot, yeah.
And it looks like the sewer project is completed up to Davidsburg Road.
I believe so, yes, yeah. There was another pipe they found in the street, across the street or something, but I believe that's been handled already.
Oh, I
too.
don't know, but equipment moved away.
Yep, so, yep.
Are you, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Have you heard anything, any movement on the, I forget the name of the project there, the Hilton where the barn and house were removed? I know that the last you reported, they were waiting for the state. I think PennDOT was to grant.
They're still, I don't know what's the best word, I was gonna say fussing with PennDOT. The movement of traffic has been identified by PennDOT, how they want it to be. And that has caused a little bit of trouble for them. They're not getting, I don't know if this is for sure, I'm not the realtor in that by any stretch. But that might be hindering the people coming in and wanting places in that,
I see.
right?
At this point, we're still not sure who was actually coming in there, correct?
That's correct, no, I'm not.
Yeah. It was reported the other night, Ms. Sermon, I think, had reported in your meeting that the Lidl was still interested in that, the old store there?
Yes. They did present a plan in December, and it was to use a large part of the existing structure, and that plan was approved. So there has been an inquiry, or we've called to find out what their plans are. So I did see that the one in at behind the college
Yeah,
is
going on.
happening,
Yeah.
yes.
Are your newsletters available online? I'm in Washington Township, so I don't get them. Do you know
I
if
won't
they're?
honestly know that. I can find out though.
Extra copy?
Yeah, yeah. I do have a copy here, you're welcome to it, other than it has some yellow highlights from what I've done, but
I mean, did they get mailed to the people here?
Yes.
Okay.
yes, yes.
And
And I knew,
wanted to- oh, excuse me, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we do have email, we're starting to build email if anybody from the township, a resident wants, and so that we can send things out to them. But I'm not sure if the newsletter is one of the things we send out though.
I mean, it would be nice with the events that you were talking about coming up, it would be nice to have that as a
Right.
reference.
Well, we have a website, the,
Okay.
I just looked there,
It
they
is
are
on the
online,
website.
yes.
Okay, all right,
okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Well, I just wanted to comment on how all the activities that were listed in there. My phone is loaded with stuff, and I know Chantel's am I pronouncing her name?
Chalet,
Chalet, okay.
yes,
Is a big part of that.
Yes.
And I commented on that on a phone call I made, and they said she works so hard.
yes.
And the vendor fair, I'm interested in that. So there's and the camp out, there's so many neat things she has planned. I would like to commend her again and tell
Thank you.
you that I'm so pleased with what she has organized.
Good, thank you, I'll let her know.
Have you heard anything? Is there going to be a traffic light going in with Dunkin' Donuts, or won't there be?
No,
Good.
the only thing I'm not 100% sure about is I thought they were gonna try to minimize left-hand turns out of there. They were gonna sort of ask that, try to push the traffic up and come out where there is a signal light, but, I don't know how they're gonna stop people from turning left, other than, I don't know, cement barriers or something, but I don't think they'll do that.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Stefanovich. All right, Dr. Maloney, elementary encore schedule.
Elementary principal.
All right, good evening, everyone. Mr. Cobb, Mrs. Huffnagel, and Dr. Weisling here. We would like to present to you an idea, an encore schedule for next year. Now, keep in mind, this would be for 5th and 6th grade only. So some of our current challenges with our current schedule is that enrichment and intervention can be impacted by band and chorus offerings. That really impacts all of our students because our students need intervention and enrichment time. Our current, obviously, encore schedule for 5th and 6th graders, it does lack student interest and choice because they're pretty much predetermined what encore they would have throughout the cycle. And also, we just need to make sure that, again, that all students receive equal intervention and enrichment opportunities for all students. So that's some of our challenges right now. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Huffnagel to present the actual schedule to you.
So we operate on a 6-day schedule, A through F day. And currently, the students rotate through general music, PE, wellness, library, and art. And it just kind of repeats through the cycle. What we're proposing is that the students would see in semester 1, for example, in 6th grade, they would have general music, PE, and wellness on the first 3 days of the cycle. The second 3 days of the cycle, they would have the opportunity for some clubs. And they would sign up at the beginning of the year for clubs. There would be a fine arts club, which would have music, band, chorus, and art. And there'd be a PE club, as well as a media club, which is something also that is difficult to get into our current day. They're usually missing regular instruction to get out to the media club to present like the news and things that the students are doing through technology. So students would sign up for these things. It would last for a semester, the clubs would last, and then the next semester they would sign up again. If a student did not get their first choice in the first semester, they would be up for first choice in the second semester. As far as music goes, it gives the opportunity for band and chorus to be incorporated into the encore schedule. So, for example, if a student was in chorus but not in band, they would have supposedly chorus on day D and then have 2 days of art. If they were in band, they might have band on day E and the other 2 days be having art class. It also provides the music teacher an opportunity to have a select ensemble or to get the band and chorus together at the same time to do some performances together, and would also provide for a much longer time period to be rehearsing, because currently in the buildings it's 20 to 30 minutes. This would be a solid 40 minutes of rehearsal for band and chorus, as well as the other clubs. So on the opposite semester, the rotation, general music would be rotated out with art in the 3-day rotation, and then they would sign up for the next club. And so that's just the example of 6th and 5th grade. The other grade levels would not be impacted at all, and this doesn't change the time of day for encore. It's not really changing the master schedule, except we're substituting D, E, and F with clubs. If you want to flip to the next one, I may have covered everything that's in that slide, but I did. Yes, those are the club choices. And Dr. Wiesling is going to take the last slide.
And I do want to identify currently band and chorus participation is occurring during our grade level intervention time. Each grade level has in addition to their core instructional blocks and encore, there's a designated intervention time. And so band and chorus students, because they want to participate in grade 5 or 6, are being pulled from the intervention time instead of core instruction. So we're just proposing to replace, and they're getting double of the encore because of the 6-day cycle. So we're just proposing to allow the grade level intervention to include the chorus and band members so that they can either, they use that intervention time to reteach skills, get caught up on missed work, or looking at their data, and the teachers have the opportunity to meet with smaller groups to say, okay, we're going to work with you now because we need to reteach and pick up on some of these skills, or get caught up on some assignments, or just additional catch-up time. So the students who are attending the band and chorus either are giving up that opportunity, or sometimes because maybe it's such an important element to make up that work or get the retaught skills, they might be missing the band or chorus practice. So we're just proposing that we set aside some scheduled time, instead of them having the double encore, is that it's going to give them opportunity to select the band and chorus, and they're going to not be pulled out from the intervention time. So benefits, it allows for the remediation intervention for 5th and 6th grade, gives them, actually it's giving them the opportunity to start looking at clubs and selection and giving some, because even now in the middle part of our day, for example, at some of our buildings, or at LIBE, is a lot of the students who are interested in art, they're going in and are meeting with Mrs. Storms during the middle part of the day, probably out of their lunch and recess time. Like Mrs. Huffnagel said, we have a lot of students who want to be on the media club, and they're being pulled because they want to be, they're filming the announcements for the daily announcements. So here's an opportunity where actually through the choice of clubs, they're getting some more exposure to their interests, and it's also setting up where when it gets into the middle school and the high school level where they do have more course selection, it kind of eases them into that opportunity. And I think with the club opportunity, it's also going to create the mentor kind of mentee and interest level there.
I have a
Can you-
question.
oh, yeah.
What about fourth grade? Don't they get, or doesn't affect them with intervention?
Fourth grade does also get impacted a little bit for instrumentals, and some buildings do have the intermediate or beginner band program. We just wanted to kind of pilot this with fifth and sixth grade and see how it worked. And then as the sixth graders roll up to the intermediate school, the new middle school, that would give us an opportunity to roll the fourth graders into the same type of approach.
So I was looking at the schedule where you have
Yes.
the 6 days. So they're going to only have gym, PE/wellness once a cycle unless they opt for the club experience.
That is correct.
Because I know that it used to be once a cycle like a while ago, and now
Yes.
it's twice a cycle. And I have a little bit of concern that some of those students who might need it a little bit more than others aren't going to choose it for their club.
Right.
And so I have a little bit of concern with that. And the club choices with chorus and band, it's not going to be a situation where, let's say on D-Day, class 1, that the music teachers are trying to teach band and chorus within that same 40-minute period where they have to kind of divide, or one day
No.
only, okay, so they're completely
Yes.
separate. Okay.
So it'll be a fine arts club. So the music teacher and the art teacher in each building will be working together to come up
Okay.
with that program. So the students who aren't in one musical selection versus the other will have a balance with art class.
Okay. Are there any other encore programs that are going from 2 to 1, like PE and wellness? Or is it just that one? Art.
Art,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
I did personally hear from 2 different girls in the 5th grade who are struggling readers, who really, really want to be in chorus, but they do not go to chorus. They have not signed up for it because they know they need their intervention. And so this would give them that opportunity. I got like a little bit of chills thinking about that, because some of those students just really need that time, because that would be an area for them to excel when the rest of the day is really hard. So I think this would be a great consideration for them.
I agree.
With the program like this compared to what it's currently doing in the music programs, which demand a lot of cooperation and rehearsal time and all that sort of thing, is that time increasing, decreasing? Have you gotten any feedback from the music teachers
Yes.
as far as what their thoughts of this change is?
We have discussed this as an administrative team, and I did actually speak with the Encore teachers at my building before I went forward, and certainly decided to bring it to you. Not all of the Encore teachers in the building have seen this plan yet, and again, it is just a proposal, but they will ultimately be gaining time in band and chorus because it gives them additional day to have band and chorus. So the music teachers in the district can get together and say, what do we want to do with that third day, that third 40-minute block? And right now, they're either getting 20 or 30 minutes, depending on the building schedule, for band, and another 20 or 30 minutes for chorus. So they have a whole additional block of time. So I could see some beautiful things happening there with like a select ensemble, or them having time to be blended with band and chorus, maybe learning a song together. So I think it'll really be very positive for them. They're going to get more time with band and chorus than they currently are receiving. Yeah.
Another thing to consider too, right now, our music teachers sometimes, they're pulling kids for band and chorus, but then there's that discussion between regular ed teacher. They need to stay back for, like I said, remediation, intervention, and so then it kind of becomes a struggle. With this schedule, it does secure that time for them. So
And ultimately, there's no conflict for the student trying to decide what's the right thing for them to do that day. So, teachers aside and their ability to work that out, it's really about the children who, should be afforded these opportunities. So I personally feel like it would be a very good solution to a situation that we're currently having. Anybody else?
All right, thank you. Next, Mr. Benton, Human Submarine Team.
Hello, everyone. Just a quick update on our Human Submarine Team. Tuesday, 7 of our students had the privilege of going to GAE Industries over in Manchester on Board Road. They presented for about an hour to a panel of 15 engineers. They are looking for funding to help them on their human submarine powered team to get to the competition in late June. It went very well. All 7 of them, they had about an hour presentation, 15. All the engineers for that company decided to take it forward to the CEO to look at the funding. One engineering came to our teacher, Mr. Smith, and said he was so impressed that doesn't matter what the company gets, he's going to put in his own money to help benefit the human submarine powered team. So it's gone quite well. The hall's actually made. They're actually working on the inside where the driver is going to sit. They are working with Voith Hydro, creating the propellers right now. They are machining them in our CNC machine lab. So it's coming together nicely. So we're hoping to have it done by the end of school. In 2 weeks, the students will be going on their own to be scuba certified. The humans sub is not watertight. So when they do go in, they have to go in with tanks and be scuba certified. Okay?
What is it? I don't know what a human submarine is.
It's a sub vessel. It's about the length of this table, and a student will lay in it and pedal it, but it's a whole team that's creating this, and they will, when they go to the competitions, a presentation, they'll actually be competing against college students in Virginia Beach.
So why does this company, okay, so it's something they're building for a competition. Why is this company interested in that? It sounds like this is a team sport or something.
It's our engineering students, and they decide to take this one as their own thing, and they're raising their own funds to go to it.
So the company is impressed with the fact that these kids
Correct.
can build this and come up.
Correct.
Okay.
So they created their own mold for the hall, and then it's all fiberglass. They've created their own hall out of fiberglass. So everything that they've created is they've created themselves, even down to CNC machining the fins that will go to make the propeller.
So it's like a bunch of entrepreneurs getting together and coming up
Yeah,
with this. Okay.
it's quite impressive, actually. So, okay. Any other questions? All right. Thanks.
Mrs. Herman, maybe they'll take you for a ride in Pinchot Lake one night or something, test it out.
I'm not doing the scuba.
You're not scuba certified, right? Okay, next up we have Lauren Stadel from RBC for bond refunding.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here this evening. Here to talk to you about really 2 different subjects. One, we just wanted to give the board a brief overview of how we finished out the second part of our financing for your capital projects. And secondly, I wanted to present to the board an opportunity that we really never thought would come to fruition, but given where interest rates have gone over the past couple months, has presented itself. And so we wanted to put it in front of you for consideration this evening for possible action next month. So the first page of what is on the screen and in front of you as well is just an overview of all of your outstanding debt as it currently stands, adding in the 2019 bonds, which we priced about a month and a half ago. I'll direct you to the footnotes at the bottom, and you can see that footnote 6, which relates to the bonds that we just priced, came in at a yield of 3.08%. So pretty phenomenal, being just north of 3%, given the length of the debt and the amount that you borrowed. So we captured some really great interest rate savings based versus what we had been budgeting previously to actually locking in the rates. So kudos to your administration in getting us through the rating process in a timely manner and getting the offering document put together. So this is where you currently stand, but I will point out in columns 2 and 3, you have 2 existing bank loans with BB&T, and they are fixed at 2.75%. So when we got those back in 2015, they were a great rate, and they will be fixed until you pay it off, but we actually may be able to do a little bit better with the current interest rate environment. They are callable at any time, and so we can move forward with refunding those at any point in time. We don't need to wait for a magic date in the future like we do for some of your other debt. So this is both gross and net debt. The right side of the page, as you may recall from past meetings, just nets out any PlanCon reimbursement that you receive for your different construction projects. But I will note that the 2018 and 2019 bonds were currently showing as 100% local effort by the district. You have not yet been assigned any sort of reimbursable percentage from PDE, nor would I expect to see that anytime real soon. They're kind of in a backlog right now. So the next page shows the what interest rates have done over the past year. And we like to use the 10-year U.S. Treasury as a good benchmark for interest rate movement because municipal bonds, school district bonds tend to follow the U.S. Treasury market. And I have 2 points in time listed on there. The first on the left side being June 6th of 2018. That's when we priced the first tranche of the capital project financing for the high school. And March 4th, when we priced the second issue. And you can see that towards the end of 2018, interest rates were heading north and then have really come down since then. And I'll point you to the far right-hand side of the column. And you can see that interest rates kind of dropped pretty precipitously after we priced the issue. And unfortunately, we don't have a perfectly clear crystal ball, and we couldn't capture that last little drop, but interest rates have sort of normalized since then, and so sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but locking in at a 3% would be pretty great in my book. But because of that additional drop that's happened, we now may have an opportunity to refinance those 2 BB&T bank loans that were done in 2015. It is fairly interest rate sensitive, and so if rates do continue to march upward, the opportunity may go away. And that's not a problem because your interest rate is fixed on those bonds, and so you'll just continue to pay what you're currently paying now. But we thought it might make sense to put the idea in front of you tonight so that we can get everything in place so that if rates do remain favorable enough to realize economic savings on a refinancing of that debt, that we have all of the mechanisms in place to be able to act quickly because, as you can see here, rates do move with a lot of volatility and very quickly. The next page will look familiar from all of our previous conversations about the high school and middle school project financing. And this is just to show you kind of where we came in at on a net basis, and the total millage requirement is shown in the green column, as well as the planned approximately $7.1 million of district cash that you're going to use to help phase in those mills over time. So just wanted to show you kind of where we landed, and now that that's all put to bed, great interest rates that we locked up as a result of the efforts of the board and the administration. So we applaud you on that. Next page then is just a snapshot of what the refunding savings could potentially look like if we could lock up a new set of bonds and or bank loan to refund the 2015 bank loans. We're not going to light the world on fire like we have with some previous refinancings where we've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. This loan does not have a lot of time left on it to squeeze out a lot of interest rate savings. But I will point out that we're currently showing about $148,000 of one-time savings, and then your annual payment would revert to what you're currently paying right now. So we're absorbing all of the savings in fiscal 1920, and then your payments return to where they are. We're not stretching debt out. We're not restructuring anything, so we're keeping the same maturity on the bonds. But if you can look at the sensitivity analysis sort of in the middle of the page, that shows you the effect of what interest rates do to this refinancing opportunity and why it really didn't present itself until recently. So 25 basis points ago, so savings at plus 25 basis points, refinancing the bank loans would have made no sense. You would have saved negative dollars, and that's certainly never something we would suggest. But if rates drop from today, where they are today, 25 basis points, which is 1/4%, so from 2 to 175, you're saving about $350,000. And so it's very interest rate sensitive, which is why we recommend getting all of the mechanisms in place, getting it on the books with with DCED per the Local Government Unit Debt Act, like we do all of your other debt, so that if and when the time comes where interest rates are such that we can save some significant dollars, that we are well positioned in order to do so. So our recommendation would be that at your May 21 meeting, that the board consider a bond parameters resolution, similar to what you did for the high school financing. It sets forth maximum principal and interest rates so that everything can be filed with DCED, allowing us to then access the market much more quickly if and when interest rates are at a level that provide us with some economic savings. And if rates do hang in there and we can get something done soon, it'll be a very easy lift for the rating agency and for your administration because they've very recently been through that whole process. And so it'll be a quick refresh of the offering document and the legal docs that we just went through. Can I answer any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any costs associated with going through this process? And is that factored into this, or would that take away from the net savings?
This cost, this savings analysis assumes this is net of all costs of issuance. And let's say you decide to move forward and consider a resolution next month and you pass a resolution. The only cost that you will be out, let's say if the market goes sideways and we can't price bonds, we can't save any money, will be the cost of the advertising in your paper, the cost to DCED, so that's $2,000, $3,000 maybe at the most. The other costs that you would be out if nothing happens, and if we get to that point, would be the rating fee. And for a bond issue of this size is probably around $15,000. But in the event that we get a rating, interest rates go up, and we can't refinance, we have a lot of leverage with the rating agencies, and they will usually charge you, they'll cut the bill in half, ask for that half to be paid, and we can then say, well, let's hold off on that, and we will revisit this. You know, if rates come back and we can get it done, then we'll only owe them the other half of that payment. And so at the most, I would say you would be out $10,000 between half of the rating fee, the DCED filing fee, and your advertising fee if it doesn't get done. Other questions? Again, we would have loved to have gotten this done in conjunction with the 2019 bonds. That would have made a lot of sense. But when we priced the 2019 bonds, we weren't anticipating that rates would drop another 25 basis points after that. And so at that time, it would not have made any sense to add them in to the 2019s. Okay. Well, then we will plan to be here on May 21st with a resolution for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, next we have our first public comment period for items on or off of the agenda. It is a 3-minute period. If you have anything you would like to comment on, please come to the microphones. Okay, we did not have an executive session tonight, so I do not have anything else to report under Board President's communications. So we'll move on to our committee reports. The first is the Comprehensive Plan and Curriculum and Professional Development Committee with Mr. DeLauder, Mrs. Herman, and Mrs. Maley.
Okay, thank you. We had our last comprehensive planning meeting, and I'm assuming Dr. Maloney will be getting that all document ready to go to send into PDE for us. We started off the evening with Dr. Maloney just doing an overview, I'm assuming, of where we've gone to up to this point. I was not there, I was late getting into the meeting, so just kind of an overview of where we're at to date. And then Mrs. Kroom talk to us about the elementary configuration plan and looking at I guess the question is, do we need to move forward with that? And the consensus from Mrs. Crewman, I guess, the central administration, is that we cannot continue down the road where we're at right now. And so their recommendation is to start looking forward with reconfiguring the elementary schools. With that being said, understand that this is in the very preliminary beginning stages. So while they're leaning to a K-2 for 3, 4, 5 configuration, obviously that's not set in stone yet, and there's going to be a lot of meetings with all the different stakeholders to get input, further input, more concrete input as to where to go with that. She also talked about, as part of the comprehensive plan, creating a new educator framework. And basically is how we are going to, district-wide, it's going to be aligned to the Danielson model. And I'm not real familiar with that, so if you have any questions on that, you could ask Mr. Cremo on that. But basically, this educator framework, it's going to look at how do everything that we do in the district align with Danielson, and does it align with Danielson? And if it doesn't, then we need to take a serious look at whether or not it's something that we need to continue doing within our district. And I'm saying that correctly?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
So again, I think, this is one of those things that is still
Work in progress.
work in progress, and we're hoping that, by the end of the comprehensive plan period, that we'll have that implemented. From there, Mrs. Strasbaugh got up and just talked briefly about the high school's targeted school improvement plan. And with this plan, where it wasn't a comprehensive school improvement plan, so in other words, so the entire school was not deficient in any targets. It was our subgroup of our special education students. And she just discussed how they're getting together, kind of like how we're working through the comprehensive plan for the district, how they're coming together and coming up with a plan to deal with the special education students and how to increase their scores and their success rate. Finally, we went into an activity, our final activity for this process, and we were divided into 3 groups, and our job was to develop the professional development training schedule, looking at a 4-year implementation schedule. And we had several different areas that we had to look at, and we had to come up with specific ideas on what to have the professional development on. And I can't speak for the rest of the groups or the rest of the membership, Mrs. Herman and Mrs. Maley, but I found it very challenging with developing this schedule, in that I think a lot of the items that at least our group came up with, we felt needed to be done yesterday. So trying to figure how to do that over 4 years. Matter of fact, our group actually had the -1 year, so like next year instead of the 2 year down the road, things to be done. And then we just did a wrap up and thank yous and our nice little certificate of appreciations that everybody was given, frameable, for that. So at this point, I think we're done. Dr. Maloney, like I said, is going to now work on the plan itself and get it developed and get it approved to be sent into PDE. Mrs. Herman, Mrs. Maley, anything on that? Okay. Any questions?
Okay.
You do such a good job.
Thank you, Mr. DeLauder. Next, we have our Capital Project Steering Committee, Facilities and Safe and Supportive Schools, with Mr. Deschaux, Mr. Emig, and Mr. Rawhauser. Mr. Emig, did you want to report out on the D10s, things like that?
Yes, I will. One of the main topics that Mrs. Kroom had presented to us tonight was a letter from the Dover Youth Football Association for the stadium usage for 2019 season. In our committee, we had a lot of members of the committee there, plus we also had board of directors and members of the Dover Youth Football came as well. Some of the items that came about this was Mr. Nelson had stated when the Dover Youth Football was at North Salem, there was a smoking problem. Plus, they said that the goalposts were never taken down. They argued that point with us, but they're still standing as of now. According to policy, because they have 5 games scheduled for 5 Sundays, 3 in September and 2 in October, they wanted to start the first one at noontime. But our policy states that we cannot use anything before noon, as far as the custodial staff as well. Mrs. Kroom had a concern about the concession stand that they want to use, because the concession stand is in the building. And if we open that to them, they have access to the building. So they said they could put up a pop-up tent. They want use of the press box, scoreboard, sound system. However, they do have a 1,000-watt PA system that they could use. 98% of the participants of the Dover Youth Football come from Dover. 2% come from outside of the district. We had major concerns about cleanup. They said that they would take care of that. In fact, they have a person called Dave Schatzer, who is a ServSafe certified individual. And of course, Mr. Nelson stated who would get the key, would they get a key for the stadium. They wanted us to waive all the fees for this. However, we feel that a custodian needs to be on site for 7 hours at $35. And we should have a district personnel staff member there as well. So what happened was we thanked them for coming. We told the committee to think about this, and we're going to discuss this at our May meeting. But I wanted to bring it up to the board that this is what they're looking at. True that we are here for sports, for music and everything else. This is a Dover Youth. So we do have a lot to think about. I don't think we really want to turn this down, but there are concerns that we did have. The other item that we discussed was the D10 list. Mr. Nelson is still looking for a used bucket truck. They're looking at repainting the 5th grade hallways in Weigelstown. They want to replace 16 existing cameras and add 23 new interior and 11 exterior cameras at the high school. They want to seal coat blacktop at the playground at Libe, rebuild the areas around the retention pond spillway and drain pipes at Libe, replace carpet in 8 classrooms with VCT. VCT, if you get upstairs in the kitchen upstairs, that's what that flooring is made of, and that's at Libe. We need to have a 10-passenger van, a new one. We currently have 4, because some of the vans we have are pretty well, according to Mr. Nelson, shot. And Mr. Papa had said that we need to replace the HP sand server blade storage. It was purchased in 2009, and it has run its limit, so that needs to be replaced. So all these items I just mentioned come to $365,342. However, Mrs. Banco came and she had informed us of certain things that we really didn't spend over, and I don't know if you want to update the rest of the board on that or not.
Okay, so our plan would be for these D10 projects, and usually for any D10 project that we have, we would cover them out of our capital projects fund. Just a little history on our capital projects fund. In 2014, prior to any building project related things, for the high school, middle school, or the Dover Elementary project was over. So at that point, our cash in that fund was $6.9 million. Over the past 4 years, we have been able to transfer money into that fund of approximately $6.4 million. So we have built up a cash balance of about $13.5 million. And through that process, when we were transferring the general fund surpluses over to the capital projects fund, we said that we were going to use those funds for our current capital project for the high school and middle school. So if you take the $7 million out that Lauren's had referenced to before that we are putting as cash to the projects, that puts us back at a cash balance of about $6.5 million. So over about 4 years, we have used only $400,000 of the $6.9 million that was sitting in there to begin with. I think that's pretty good. The D10 projects, as Mr. Emick had relayed to you, cost about $365,000 total. So we'll be sitting at a cash balance of less that $7 million of about $6.1 million. When we moved these funds over there, even prior to 2014, when those funds were set aside, this is what they were set aside for. They were set aside for projects such as this. Mr. Nelson and I sat down today and had a good discussion in regards to LIBE and what future projects we're going to need there. We talked about a little bit about some roofing issues that at LIBE that we're going to look into. We talked about a second cafeteria line down there. We talked about painting classrooms and things like that. Overall, about $1 million. And of course, we also in the future are planning on using this money for other projects, other emergencies that happen in the district that may not be budgeted for every year. So along with that, I also would like to report that right now, currently, we're looking at about $130,000 interest revenue in that fund a year. So if that holds true for next year, which I think it will, I think it may be a little bit more than that in our interest rate environment right now. You're netting that $130,000 against that $365,000. I think that's pretty sustainable to be able to pay for some of those things that we desperately need. I want to make a side note that the HP server upgrades that Mr. Papa had talked about in that committee are currently sitting in the general fund budget for 1920. So that $208,000 would then come out of that budget, which would reduce our deficit in the general fund by that amount. So if we have the $208,000 plus, hopefully, and I can't guarantee it at this point, maybe 140, 150 savings from a possible bond refinancing, our deficit, our $2 million deficit that we had presented yesterday and through the preliminary budget would, come down to about, it should be about 1.8 at this point. We are continuing to go through the budget line by line to see if there's any more projects in there that maybe we can fund through our capital projects fund to help minimize the deficit in the general fund. And also taking a look at all our programs as we continue to do throughout the budgeting process. So I just wanted to give you some background information. This would not be coming out of the general fund budget, and hopefully, we can do some of this stuff to make sure that we continue to be able to utilize the technology that we've been provided. So, yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Benko.
Welcome.
Just one thing that on the replacing of the cameras, it's an estimate cost of $62,000. Mr. Perkins had stated that Act 44 grant would help. However, they have that much money that we don't know if we'll get anything out of the Act 44 grant. Is that correct, Mr. Perkins? Okay. So, Mr. Rawhauser, Mr. Deschaux, anything I missed or that you want to add on?
I'll make a comment about the rental of the stadium. There needs to be a lot more talk and consideration because it's a big investment down there. And the thing that bothers me a little bit is they didn't honor their contract from last year. I know everybody has good intents, but getting the public that comes to make them listen doesn't make it any easier because a lot of people just don't listen. Well, they stay off the field because you're not allowed on the field with heels and things. And how will that have any effect on the warranty of the football field if they use it more? And the other thing is, if we open it for one group, how many more groups will we have in our district that want to use it? And these are a lot of things that need to be considered.
Any, Mr. Deschaux? Okay.
I'd like to say something about this too. I've always been a big believer that our facilities are here to be used by the community because they put the money into them. I really believe that. This one makes me really nervous.
Well, like I said, the committee is thinking about this, and we'll talk about more in next month about this. And however, the board has to vote on this once the committee, so it will be up to us to decide if we give this a green light or a red light.
I think if it comes from the committee that they say a recommendation that we should move forward, the only way I would support moving forward is if they are paying fees. You know, we cannot be a, nonprofit for everybody and, let everybody do their thing. We have to cover our costs as a district. So I think that is critical, that they're going to pay what it takes to open that stadium up and staff it properly.
We're responsible to the other people too.
Yeah.
that-
Yeah.
So,
And of course, it was brought up that with the new turf field, smoking can be a big problem. And Mrs. Kroom had stated that if we keep getting groups like this, the field is eventually going to be worn down and need to be replaced. And of course, when that time comes, guess who's going to foot the bill for that? Each one of us sitting up here. So, other than that, I have nothing else.
I hope it's more than just us, Terry.
Well, we're included in that.
Any questions on those subjects? Okay. Earlier today, I was working from home today, and I had the idea to give Mr. Nelson a call to see if I could go up and get a tour of the site for the first time, and it felt really good to walk down a hallway and see pipes and electrical stuff and all that going on. So if you want to give us an update, Dave, on what's happening down the road here, that would be great.
I forgot the pictures. Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry.
I have it on mine. You want mine?
Yeah. Mhm. Sorry.
We did learn that hard hats leave a real nice line on bald heads when you take them off, so.
I'm sorry, Dave. Doesn't matter.
I think if you click on the first one, it'll take you off of it. Click on the, you're not the very first one. There you go. All right, here we go. So this is my opening screen. So a lot of pictures of digging footers. It was a good 2 weeks that we had now. We got a lot of work done in the ground. This is the second floor of the classroom area above the science wing. We had poured the concrete floors. I showed you pictures of that the last time we were here. And this is just, I'll show you a progression of pictures here of how the walls went up. So same shot. Walls are going up, and we're moving right along with getting those classrooms ready. Just from an opposite angle here, same thing. This was
corridor in the first floor in front of the science wings. Go to the next slide there. So we put that in the morning. It was 33 and a half yards of concrete, and started about 6 a.m. and we started pulling it, digging it back out by 12:30. They, unbeknownst to the contractor, had the wrong concrete. So they had to pull 33 and a half yards of concrete out. We did it before it got hard, so it wasn't a big deal, but it took time. So the following morning, we were pouring concrete again. This was all at their expense. It's not going to come back on us. So it was their mistake. It was their fault. So, so we now have, go ahead, now have that, you went really fast. We now have that corridor, that's the same corridor. So this is the main corridor in the science wing, looking down. And then the second floor, this is looking out towards Intermediate Avenue. So another picture coming up, you'll be able to see just the corner of the intermediate school. They set the steel decking up, or steel trusses up there, and then the steel decking. Go ahead. There's a steel decking, and then we poured it. We just poured this Monday. So they're smoothing it all out there for us. So our next step there will be to put walls up. This is right down below the picture I just showed you. This is actually the stair tower. To get up one of the stair towers, get on the second floor. Picture didn't come out as well as I hoped. Actually, on the front, it looks a little better. The black brick, we have two different types of brick. We have a red brick and a black brick. This is just a kind of a representation of the black brick. Starting on the footers for the auditorium in this picture, and the same thing. I'm actually on the second floor taking pictures down on some of the footers and stuff. This is the music wing, the start of it. Just another shot overall. So give you a back up or what too. Give you an idea. I'm standing almost about a third of the way into the school, and the other end of the school is down there where you see that green. This is going to be a very long building, so who's ever in it better bring their track shoes. It's a long way from one end to the other. So, go ahead. This is an aerial shot of the auditorium area as we had the footers poured and started doing some wall work there, putting some walls up. They're building some cement block walls. This is the area they're in. It's actually about 9 feet deep. It's where the orchestra pit is, or will be eventually. Just another shot as they're bringing up the foundation for the auditorium. And this might be a little hard to see, but this is right alongside of the auditorium. It's kind of almost right underneath the door where you're going to go in and out of the band room and the band director's office. But the rocks you see here are the old foundation to the farmhouse that sat there at one time. So don't know when that was tore down, but it was a long time ago, obviously. This is just an aerial or a side shot of the classroom areas going up. We're actually moving out into some of the other wings now. So I took this picture, and on the next one or two, you'll see how this progressed. So this is an early aerial shot of the building before we poured the second floor and before we put the walls up in the science wing classrooms on the second floor. And if you look now at the science wing on the second floor, the walls are all up. And they have the steel decking on that other section. You lost something. There we go. But you can kind of see the progression there. Lots of steel trusses and decking going on. Brian Bond takes these pictures, by the way, with his drone. We started putting in windows this week, so we now have windows in pretty much all the first floor area that has concreted floors in. So, the couple shots of the windows. This is what our doors look like before we get them. They come in stacked up like this. I was at the warehouse the other week and on Tuesday actually, and took this picture. The next picture is that's what our door frames come in. That's how they come in. They come in disassembled, and they have to put them together. They'll actually put them together, they put the door on them, they put the hardware on, and they send them to us. So when we get them, we just stick them up. This is, I know you see my reports, and I talk a lot about undergrounds. It's a lot of stuff underground, and this is the underground electrical service that's gonna go from Intermediate Avenue all the way down to the intermediate, or the new high school. So this gets laid down in the trench, and actually gets encapsulated in concrete. This is what we call the risers or stringers for the stair tower to get to the second floor. Couple slides ago, I showed you a picture where this was just out of the ground, and this is the very front of the building is right in that area where that green pipe is. So that's as far as we're going forward with that towards the current intermediate school. And that's this morning. So that's the same picture. So they're pretty much up, starting on the second floor area. We had somebody break in. So this was in back of the current multi-purpose field. I guess some kids, I don't know, they got in there and cut the wire or whatever, and worked their way through, and they're in. So I found it this morning and had people repairing it right away. So just an area we're gonna have to keep our eye on. So, and that should be it. Any questions? I do have one correction to make. And I told Mr. Eifert about this today. Last night, I made an error when I made a report. I said we were about $9,000 in the red, so to speak, for our change orders, and I was wrong. We are still $2,081.37 ahead. So for some reason, something I put in one of the cells didn't add up, but I don't know why. But I went back and checked it today, because after I thought about that, it can't be right. So we have not spent any money on change orders. We actually have gained money on change orders.
Question. How many elevators will be part of the construction?
Two. There's one in the main area, the front area, or the main school area, goes up right, it's near the office, goes up near the, I'm gonna go back a little, library. I can never think of what they call it now. It goes up on the second floor at the library, and there's another one at the swimming pool to get you on the second floor back there.
The other question I had was, just out of curiosity, how was the concrete issue discovered? Is that something that the contractor found?
No, they didn't. I didn't see it either. I mean, I said to Nate when he was over today, I said, a lot of us looked at it, nobody saw it, and we all should have saw it, but nobody saw it. You look at it, it looks like concrete, and it's coming out, and by all means, it looks like concrete. We test everything. So we have a guy that comes and he does what's called a slump test on our concrete, and then he does cores. Like cores are about this big around, about that high, and he'll put them in those and let them dry, take them back, and they crush them. And as soon as he got on, he was a little late getting there because he had another job that day. And as soon as he got there and he walked up, and the guy says, "Are you going to take your samples?" He said, "Well, it's no use I take them because that's not the right concrete." He knew it right away. He was the only one that saw it. I mean, there's probably 15 or 20 people that looked at it, nobody saw it. And he said it doesn't have fiber in it. And it didn't. So as soon as they found that out, they just started ripping it out. I mean, they could have pulled the wool over our eyes and said, "Oh, it's got it in there, you just don't see it." But no, they pulled it out. They're pretty honest. So, but we checked the mortar. We check so many batches a day when brick mortar and block mortar. We check the hardness of the ground. We check concrete footings. We check everything. We have a guy that walks around and looks at welds and steel work and you name it. So
A lot of checks and balances.
a lot of eyes on this. So lots of eyes. Anything else?
Okay, thank you, Dave. Human and Fiscal Resources, Mr. Cook.
I will try to keep this to under an hour. I'm being threatened down on this end. Just kidding. We had a pretty healthy agenda tonight. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of quick hitters, and there's a lot of things that are going to be coming before us this is the typical time of year where a lot of resolutions and things related to the budget have to be passed, and a lot of those things are gonna be coming up next month as we get to the final approval for the budget, for the next year's budget. So, but we talked a little bit about job descriptions, and there's a number of job descriptions that are going to be coming before the board next month for approval. There's a lot of things that, in general, need to be reviewed. Christina had mentioned that she likes to look over job descriptions and have them reviewed at least every 5 years. And there's things that haven't been reviewed in a much longer period of time than that. So we're going to probably be seeing more job descriptions coming before the committee and coming before us as a board for approval and modifications, just to get some revised language in them. And also another thing worth noting is with just the name change, as we transition to middle school versus intermediate school, there are some things like that that will need to be changed in the job descriptions as we move forward. So might not seem like a big deal to change the name, but everything else has to follow suit. So just to highlight the ones that we looked at, we're looking at a middle school assistant principal. Again, that was mainly just revised because of period of time. It hasn't been revised, I think, since '98. I don't remember exactly, but it was quite a while. So that'll be coming before us next month. Department chairs at the middle school as well will be coming before us, and there's a few grammatical errors in the current construction of that job description, which will be tweaked. So we're going to come to the full board next month with that. Elementary math coach has a job description we looked at. Right now, it's important to note that that's not an additional position. It's basically because of class size, we can restructure to allow a teacher to be used as a math coach. So right now, that's the plan, to develop a math coach at the elementary level. Currently, the intermediate level has implemented a math coach, and that process has been very successful. So want to move it to the elementary level as well, and the first step here is with job description. Elementary instructional leadership team member. This is a budgeted stipend position that will put 4 professionals working with each individual principal in place at each of the elementary schools. They will be working with the principal to look at things such as data analysis or other district initiatives that are coming down. So it kind of gives the liaison between the principal and the teachers. So there'll be 4 at each elementary moving forward. Again, that's a stipend position, and we'll be approving that job description next month as well. Elementary curriculum leader. We're looking at 1 math and 1 ELA or English Language Arts leader for all of the elementaries, one total for each math and ELA, similar to what department chairs do at the secondary level, where they provide curriculum and input and that sort of thing. We're looking for 1 person, again, stipend position, to help with at the elementary level. And then, so that's the job descriptions that'll be coming before us next month. There's a number of things here that are on our agenda tonight. We're in our committee agenda and will be, as I said earlier, coming before the full board for approval. Some of the things we talked about tonight are preliminary, and we don't really have everything set in stone yet. Things such as the tax rate resolution. That's something we vote on every year. It basically gives the parameters of what we're doing as a board related to the budget, what any tax increase is, and all the parameters for it. So throughout the next month, that'll be tweaked, and that'll come to us kind of going along with the final budget for voting. Same thing with homestead, farmstead resolution. Numbers aren't quite there yet, but will be next month. Same thing with the insurance package. We always get final numbers there, which we approve in May. The auditor appointment will be up for approval once again. Looking ahead, once we get past this next year's audit, Mrs. Benko intends to put an RFP out, just similar to what we did with transportation, just to make sure we do our due diligence in getting, our best bang for the buck, and for auditor as well. We talked about food service budget. It's important to note that our food service budget is operating in the black. We've had a successful year once again this year, and right now the budget as it's being presented shows a surplus as well moving ahead, but we're currently 75,000, I think, is what the number we had talked about in the black right now. So that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. As a result of that, some of that surplus was used towards providing breakfast for all of our students who are taking PSSAs and Keystones. That's happened once already. It's going to happen one more time. So it's kind of a neat thing that, through this surplus that we have, we've been able to do a nice thing, make sure all the students who are taking tests have a good breakfast. So that's a missing component when you're taking a test if you're hungry. So it's helped. So that's good to note. There are some things that we don't know yet. And even though we're talking about surpluses and operating in the black, there's other components to the food services budget that the state mandates certain criteria and helps to determine what the cost of a student lunch is. So even though we're operating in the black, in all reality, Jen had shared with us tonight that it's probably going to be about a 10-cent increase per student lunch. So those are things that are beyond our control. Kind of the state sort of sets that out, but we don't have those numbers yet to really know that, but we should by next month know what we're looking at. PSBA dues renewal will be up for approval again next month. Mrs. Benko is recommending the all-access package for us once again. That's what we currently have. It's important to note that that's a little bit different than what we're currently engaging PSBA on the policy revisions and oversight. That's a little bit of a separate thing. So, but the all-access policy or all-access package is what we have been approving, and that'll moving forward be recommended again for approval. There's budget transfers and fund balance designation. This is something we always give Mrs. Benko, SLEPO, the chance to make those budget transfers as the budget is finalized and as the year end occurs, gives the authority to make those transfers without us so choosing on an individual basis at the time. So again, that's nothing new, but it'll come up next month. We talked a little bit about D10s, but and Mr. Amick's report out, and Mrs. Benko shared that. We're looking at those D10s, looking to see if there's any more ways to assign maybe some of the things that we're currently in our budget to help with offset some of the deficits by using some of the capital that we have in capital reserve funds towards that. So I think that was it. Did I miss anything? It was a lot, but did I miss anything? We're good? Okay. All right.
Good, you gave us a short version.
I gave you the condensed version.
I have a question for Mrs. Crum. We have 2 assistant principals at the high school. Are their job responsibilities the same?
Yes, they have the same job description.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else? Okay, we do have an action item under this committee tonight, so at this time I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a resignation agreement as per the enclosure.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mrs. Benko? And the motion carries. Okay, moving on to the miscellaneous period. Do any board members have anything else they'd like to add tonight?
I just wanted to make a comment on the budget. I've been kind of quiet here the last couple months as the budget's been being presented, the preliminary budgets. My hope was, is as we were getting close toward the end of the fiscal year, that we would see some more savings from our current year budget. And then going into next year, I have to say I'm concerned with our budget moving forward. Having a $2+ million deficit is concerning to me. And I know, Mr. Cook, and I hear you when you say that, you know, a lot of times those numbers aren't true. But in the past, I would have agreed with you more. But I'm seeing more that those numbers are starting to become more realistic. A couple savings that we've had over the last couple of years have been from one-time savings through, you know, plan con reimbursement, that kind of thing. The concern that I have, and what I don't want us to get into, is have a budget that is structurally unsustainable. And I don't think we're there yet, but I can see us getting to that point where we're not going to be able to sustain our budget where we're at. That leads me to my concern with some of the expenditures that we're doing this year with this current budget. For example, the school resource officer, I think, you know, while Officer Allen has done a tremendous job for us here, I have to question whether or not the addition of another officer, is it more of a want or a need at this point? And so again, I think that another one again is a social worker. I think Mrs. Johnson has done a bang-up job this year and has brought more value than to be honest, I thought would ever come from a social worker. But yeah, I guess my question is this something that we need at this point? So I just want to. The additionals, yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
You scared me.
The additional, I'm sorry, my fault. No, the additional one, no, sorry, Ms. Johnson. Your job's secure for me at this point. But again, I just want us to make sure that we keep our budget under control, because I certainly don't want to get to that point where we are raising taxes astronomically, you know, to the index or beyond. So again, I just want everybody to keep that in mind, and just wanted to state my observations and concerns with you all. That's it.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our last public comment period. This is a 2-minute period for items on or off of the agenda. Okay, future meetings. Our next board action meeting is Tuesday, May 21st, and our board committee meetings will be Thursday, May 23rd at 6, and board planning meeting that same night at 7 p.m. So if we have no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.